What is up, DOYO Livers? I'm Ross Morrone, and today we're going to be talking about branding, marketing, and advertising. I wanted to piggyback off of what Mike Ponticus talked about yesterday when he talked about branding and building your brand. If you didn't watch yesterday's video live, there's a lot of good value in there just about establishing your brand and understanding what a brand is and the differences between branding and marketing. I personally like to group branding and marketing together, and a lot of people may argue with me to say that they're really two different things, but I consider them one and the same. So it's good to put them into a bucket and say this is branding and marketing, and then when you're looking at your strategy, look at what advertising is as well. I think those two are very separate. Mike also talked yesterday about knowing that communication is also part of your brand and marketing strategy. So when I'm looking at how I build a brand or how I talk about advertising, the things that are important to me is building those strategies individually. So let's first talk about building your brand. I like to build brands on traditional marketing platforms. As much as I hate some traditional marketing, and a lot of people are not going to like that I say that, I really don't like outdoor billboards. I think TV has its place, but I'm not sure that it always works when you're thinking about specific product marketing, especially with the avenues. Now, I should have an asterisk to that because it's really about the avenues that we have available to us now that really allow us to do those things better. But when you're building a brand, those platforms really work. Traditional marketing kind of works for your brand. If you look at any of the Youngstown State University branding that we do, you'll notice that in the next couple months, we're going to have campaigns going up. And a lot of it is just very logo based. It's very brand centric. It has our brand statement on there, the why and proud. And that just is kind of building our brand. It's not telling any stories. Like Mike said yesterday, you can tell stories to your audiences, but if the product's not good, if you can't convince them to buy from you, if you're not solving an issue or a problem that they have, then your brand and your products are dead in the water. It's not even worth the money and time that it takes to put into that. So when you're building your brand, think about brands need to be repetitious. You need to have your brand show up so often and so much that it's hard for your audiences to ignore you. But it's also about placement. So if we're building a brand locally and we're taking out a lot of outdoor and we're taking out a lot of local media, we're going to be in front of people. People are going to see us. They're going to know about Youngstown State University. If I switch gears on businesses and I talk about Food E-Crave, when we look at how we brand that business, we're building a brand from thin air. So it takes a lot more for us to build that brand because nobody has heard of us before. So when we launched in August of last year, for me as the marketing person of that company, it was important for me to build a brand from scratch. It was important for me just to get the word out about us. So having a logo, and Mike talked about logos yesterday, and your logo is important because it is that identifier, and it's something you don't want to change. You don't want to have it change colors. You don't want to have it change shapes. You don't want to have it do different things. You want your brand and the logo that you use behind that brand to be very specific. Now, saying that, I also want to separate that advertising is very different. So what we do when we actually advertise our brand is we can break it down by products. And that's why I like to make that difference between the two, is to say that marketing and branding are one thing and advertising is a whole different thing. So when I think of advertising, I think about actually advertising our products. So switching back to university, when we advertise products, we're really advertising degrees. We're selling what we offer as a higher education institution. We're selling products, which are degrees. And those products also make products of people that graduate and go on to get jobs. It's the experience. So as we tell the story, we tell those stories in our advertising. We tell the stories about the research you can do here at the university and the different things you can do to better your degree. But at the end of the day, we sell degrees. Going over the Food E-Crave, we are selling products. We're selling food products. So when we are putting out those messages, we're actually telling people why they should buy this food product or how they can cook it. And I talked a little bit last week about that content strategy and building these content funnels. And that's part of your advertising strategy, is building these funnels that really tell these stories. So think of your brand and where do you tell your brand story and where do you show your logo? And your logo can have a tagline to it. Make it something that resonates with your overall company or your overall product or service. And then when you think about the advertising stories you tell, you can tell a story that may not seem related to your business. It doesn't seem related to your brand, but it's really related to the product or service that you offer. So doing that is also very important. And you need to really think about those things going into that as you're building that strategy. There's a big difference to me, in my eyes, between product marketing and service marketing. Two different types of audiences you're trying to attract and trying to get people to get to you to buy from you. When you think about product marketing, Knowing that you have that product is really something that your audience needs to know, that I am selling meat or I'm selling products with Food Crave. At the university, we're selling degrees. We have that degree that you're looking for. You can come here to get it. When we think about services, sometimes those are something that's on an as-need basis. If you're a cleaning service, somebody might only Google you or Google for somebody to clean something when there's an incident that they have to clean up. So that's a service marketing. So how we actually buy media in those. So when I'm talking about the product advertising, I may be telling a story on Facebook that's a video that has a post with it that maybe leads to a blog that leads to the product page. When I'm doing service marketing, maybe I'm only buying digital ads on Google AdWords. That way when someone does a search, and I'm buying keywords, so I'm buying cleanup or spill, stain, carpet stain, something like that. I'm actually building it around the type of service that I offer versus the type of product. Now, you can marry the two, because I can say, okay, if somebody's looking for an aged steak, I can build advertising campaign in Google AdWords that looks for keywords, anyone that's searching for aged steak. But the other thing I could do is build that content piece that's on my website. Maybe it's the blog, maybe it's the Facebook video or the Facebook post where someone can actually find it because it shows up as an organic result in Google, or it shows up in their feed. Especially if I'm boosting posts on Facebook, I could push out my advertising. Now, so that being said too, micro brands are important to think about too. We have our umbrella brand, which defines our business. It talks about our business. But it's also important to create micro brands around the type of products. When we look at, going back to Mike, the Nike idea, that Nike has the swoosh, but Nike isn't just a sporting athletic company. There's a lot more verticals to what they do. And they can break that down, especially if you break it down by sports. They actually are a sporting company. But when you break it down by the type of sports that they have, there's micro brands for each. There's the golf brands, there's the running brands, there's the athletic wear brands, there's just the general workout clothes brands. Those each have micro brands to them, but they all fall under that Nike umbrella. So you're able to build micro brands within your brand. But consider what Mike talks about with design is that you don't want to have different colored arches. When you think about McDonald's, you want it to just be a micro brand of the umbrella brand. So that's also very, very important to think about. The last piece of this for me is always the conversions and goals, how we measure the success of our branding and marketing. When it comes to traditional marketing, the reason I don't like certain things about like outdoor or TV is it's not always measurable. TV's come a long way with being able to be more measurable. You're able to get some analytics about the type of viewership they had. It's a lot of the Nielsen rating stuff, which I somewhat trust and somewhat don't. But you can actually see how many people were probably watching that program while your ad ran. That's great, but we don't know if that audience is the exact audience that was going to buy from us anyway. So we have to rely on the data that they give us when we're making these media buys to say that this is the most likely audience. So when we think back to last week, what I talked about is looking at those analytics and defining that audience is very important, not just for what you're building content-wise on social media, but it's also for this type of advertising we're doing when it comes to our overall brand and advertising strategy. Setting up the conversions and goal part of this. When you do an outdoor buy, you might put a unique URL on there, and then you can kind of monitor that to say, okay, we put a unique URL and this is how many hits we have on it. That's the only place it was on our outdoor, or maybe it's a print ad, or maybe it was on a TV commercial. So we were able to track that. A lot of the times you see these insurance commercials that have maybe a 60-minute video on their commercial, but it leads into something else. And it says, see what happens or see more. And then they give you a URL. They're really tracking that. If you've seen the MyPillow guy on TV, he's on, I swear, every channel, every time there's a commercial, he's selling a lot of pillows. He has a unique URL, or he has a unique code that you use, and you'll notice that code changes, and that helps him and their marketing people keep track of how many people ordered that week. And then that helps with a lot of things. I mean, when you're keeping track of things through the week and through the year, you're able to know kind of fluctuating, knowing when people are actually buying from you, if it's a seasonal thing. We know at Food Crave that cooking is a seasonal thing, especially outdoor cooking. And on the West Coast versus the East Coast, and the South and the North, it's a lot different. So we could actually build pockets of advertising based on knowing that the Southwest is always going to have a warmer climate, so we can, I get stuck on my words, climate, so we can actually always advertise maybe down in that area, knowing that they're going to be able to buy steaks. But in Ohio, no one's going to be cooking a steak in negative 20-degree weather, except for me, because that's what I do, and I always like to grill. So you need to think about those things too. And having conversions and goals in place to keep track of that thing, those things are also important. Anything online is very easy to keep track of, especially with Google Analytics. We're able to see that we ran that ad, connect it into the website, connect it to the actual conversions if we're using an e-commerce site, and see when that sale happens and connect it all back. That way, in advertising and marketing, not everyone wants to know the exact ROI on a dollar spent, but we now have the ability with all the analytics we have in place through all these platforms. So you need to think that through, and that's part of your strategy, and that's part of your planning. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And the thing I didn't touch on is communications. I think email communications is definitely in waves. You can build a good list and you could get a lot of interaction on that, but I think it really has to be a list that you authentically build, and that's always a slow build. If you're buying a list of emails, you're wasting money because the yield on that is going to be so low and the conversions on that is going to be so low. Build an audience the old-fashioned way. It's like the door-to-door. Collect those emails on your site, collect them from your cells, and build from there. And you're going to have a lot more success than if you went out and bought a huge list and then tried to build off of that. So that's the DOYO Live talk from today. My name again is Ross Morrone. You can check me out on Twitter at Ross Morrone. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at This Is Marketing. And you check out my podcast by searching your favorite podcasting service. Look for This Is Marketing. Thank you, and I will see you next Wednesday.